Are you struggling with sleep? Maybe you have a child or clients who have autism, signs of autism, or just speech delays, and they are struggling with sleep. I had this problem until my son Lucas was over 10 years old. And I'm going to cover the 4 pieces of advice I got to get him sleeping from not sleeping for 10 years straight to sleeping in 3 nights with these 4 steps, of which I followed 3 of them. So let's get to this really great episode. I also wanted to let you know that we have a new Kindle ebook available, Stop Playing Musical Beds, Solving Sleep Problems in Young Children. These techniques work whether you have a child with special needs or not. They are proven, they are easy, and I wish I would have known these 3 steps to solve sleep problems way back when. They're in the ebook on Kindle, marybarbera.com/sleep to get you there. And then listen to this episode where I'm going to give you the highlights. Let's get to it. Welcome back to another episode of Autism and Speech Delays Made Easy. I'm your host, Dr. Mary Barbera. Whether it's your first time here or you've been here for years, welcome back. So, the deal was in my family from the time my son Lucas was 2 years of age to 10 years of age, most nights at our house were a bad game of musical beds. That's why I named my Kindle ebook, Stop Playing Musical Beds. I also, in my Turn Autism Around book, I dedicated a whole chapter, chapter 11, Stop Playing Musical Beds, Solving Sleep Problems. I am not kidding when I talk about playing musical beds. My husband was and still is an emergency medicine physician, so he worked shift work for the years when Lucas was 2 to 10. And, so I'd want him to be able to sleep. So a lot of times we would give Lucas melatonin, an over-counter supplement that he's been taking for literally over 2 decades. We'd give him this supplement. It would help him fall asleep. But in the middle of the night, without fail, every single night for years and years, he would wake up, he would run in our bed, run in our room, jump, usually over me, into the middle of the king-size bed. And then I had a choice. I could either try to get up and move him, mostly with me laying down. I could try to get him to go back to sleep quickly. My husband could get up and move to his bed. And literally every night we did something different. And sometimes he would be awake for hours if, depending on what we did, probably didn't even matter what we did. Some nights he was just awake for many, many hours. So because of my husband's schedule, I was the one mostly managing or lack of managing Lucas's sleep problems. And I was exhausted. I really do need and enjoy sleep. And I often joke, but it was true that I would go to autism conferences because I could sleep in a hotel bed by myself and be uninterrupted. So that was part of my motivation for going to conferences early on. So when Lucas was about 6 years of age, I became a board certified behavior analyst. But even then, even with knowing all the things I learned when I was taking the coursework to become a BCBA, I still was not able to solve our sleep problems until after I wrote my first book, The Verbal Behavior Approach. I began speaking at places like Ohio, which was one of my first conferences where I went. I flew to Ohio. I'm only in Pennsylvania, so it's pretty close by, but I flew to Ohio, and I wish I would know this person's name. If this BCBA is listening, or anybody that sounds like this BCBA, I would really like to get her name because she really saved the day with some advice. But anyway, I got there, and I was taken out to dinner by this woman who's a board certified behavior analyst, and she literally gave me 4 steps, of which I chose 3 of them. And it helped me turn things around in just 3 nights after struggling for literally 10 years. So we're going to get back to that in a second. But before we do, let's talk about some of the stats. Kids in general, 15 to 40% of all typically developing children have some kind of sleep disorder at some time in their life. But the rate is much higher for children with special needs, and some reporting that sleep disorders occur with special needs at a rate of about 85%. This is reported in a book by Dr. Kirsten Worth, How to Get Your Child to Go to Sleep and Stay Asleep. So if you're a parent out there with or without a child on the autism spectrum and you're struggling with sleep, you are certainly not alone. So let's get to the advice that the BCBA gave me, which really helped me take 10 years of misery and then turn things around literally in 3 nights. So when I was writing my first book, The Verbal Behavior Approach, which was published in 2007, it's in 17 or 18 languages now. I've traveled around the world speaking about the verbal behavior approach. I did a recent episode comparing both of my books. But when I was writing that back in 2006, my husband said, do not, whatever you do not put any advice about sleep in your book because you are terrible. And I think he said, you are terrible at getting kids to sleep. Well, keeping kids asleep, and you're just in general, didn't want me to put any advice about sleep. And I agreed with him. And I didn't put any advice about sleep in my first book. So then I went to the conference in Ohio, and this really lovely BCBA who actually specialized in like eating and sleeping. She was in charge of taking me out to dinner, thank goodness. And so we were talking about my book, and she had read the book, and we were talking about Lucas, my son, who at the time was 10. And she said, well, so how is his sleep? And I had to admit that it was a real challenge for us. And that I hadn't included anything about sleep in my first book, in my only book at the time. And she actually surprised me and said, well, I specialize in sleep. So tell me about Lucas's bedtime routine. And after I did, she suggested 4 steps, of which I did 3 of them. So here are the steps that really made the difference for Lucas. Okay, so number 1 is, now remember, he's 10 years old. He's well over 100 pounds, maybe 150 pounds. I mean, he's a big kid at the time. And I was seriously worried that he was going to inadvertently hurt me when he jumped over me, and I was a pretty deep sleeper. So I was like, by the time I realized that he was awake, he was already in my bed or hopping over me. So she said, the first thing is you don't want to let Lucas into your bed. And in order to prevent that, number 2 is you're going to keep your bedroom door locked to prevent him from just dashing in. So now you might be at home and your child may be 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever age. So you want to always consider safety first. So I knew that Lucas wasn't going to go down the stairs if he found my door locked. But if that's the case, you're going to have to gate the stairs or do something to prevent your child from door is locked, I'm going to do something dangerous. But in our case, she recommended keeping the door locked. And then number 3 was when he got up in the middle of the night and came over, the door would be locked. So he would either knock or be shaking the doorknob just to alert me that he was awake. And at that point, number 3 step is to walk Lucas back to his room as soon as he tries to come in. And also during that time, I added like a promise reinforcer, like, oh, remember, you have to sleep in your own bed. You have to be in your own bed in the morning to get a special treat. So I would do that as I was walking him back. Now, he didn't have like the comprehension ability to truly, understand, like, I'm going to lock my door, but I did explain it very subtly to him while he was awake. And then during the time I walked him back, I kept language very simple. You have to stay in your own bed, remember. And he went back to bed, patted him a minute, not even a minute, just, okay, I'll see you in the morning. Good job. Don't forget, you get this special cookie in the morning, and then closed the door. Went back to my room, relocked my bedroom door, and noted the time. So the first night he came in, or he tried to come in, he tried to come out of his bed to my door 3 times on night 1. On night 2, he came over 2 times. On night 3, he came over 1 time, and then he never came over again, which was literally 10 years, 8 years of struggle from the ages of 2 to 10. And then in 3 nights with these techniques of simply locking my bedroom door, walking him back, not allowing him in my bed, not laying down with him, and simply returning and then giving that strong reinforcement in the morning. And then we were able to fade that out within, a week or 2 as well. Now, the one piece of advice that I did not follow, she recommended not allowing Lucas to have a TV in his room, even if that initially helped him fall asleep. And Lucas did back then and still has a TV and a VCR. Now it's a VCR DVD player where he watches his old tapes and his old DVDs and new DVDs, and as part of his bedtime routine. At that point, I wasn't willing to give that up, and now that's just a part of his routine. But in 3 nights, we were able to solve it. Now, one of the things, now I've helped lots of kids learn to sleep through the night since I got this piece of advice. Lucas is in his late 20s now. He just turned 28. And so, I've been at this for a long time. And so the other important thing that a lot of families do that wasn't a part of Lucas's bedtime routine is the parents lay down with the kids in their bed to get them asleep. And that is a big thing that needs to be changed if you're doing that, because if they get used to you laying there with them, cuddling with them, or just being there, or patting them, or whatever, then when they wake up in the middle of the night to go back to sleep, they're going to probably want that kind of contact. So if you are currently laying with your child, or if you're a professional trying to help families, I know pediatricians and nurses and, teachers and early intervention professionals are trying to help families. And so this guide on Kindle, Stop Playing Musical Beds, marybarbera.com/sleep, can really help you give the family some guidance. And each family is going to be different. So in there, in the Kindle book, it's only 24 pages long. I really guide you how to assess what's going on. So since us laying down in bed with Lucas wasn't part of that initial getting to sleep, we didn't need to like remove that, you know? So you really have to individualize it. But like I said, I've helped lots of families get their children sleeping with a mixture of this advice. And going from not sleeping for 10 years to a 3-day plan that worked was amazing, right? And I don't know that it can happen that quick, but some key things when you are developing your own sleep plan. Number one, always start with an assessment. And if you're reading this guide on Kindle, or you're listening to this podcast, you probably have some concerns regarding sleep, but you might also have concerns regarding talking, tantrums, picky eating, potty training, etc. So I have the Barbera Early Childhood Assessment, otherwise known as the BECA. This helps you quickly assess in 10 minutes or less your whole child or client in all areas. And that is still free at the time of this recording. marybarbera.com/assessment. We'll link it in the show notes as well. This will enable you to get your child's scores, find your strengths and needs, your child's strengths and needs in terms of self-care, language, and problem behaviors. And from a high level, look at sleep as well. The second thing you should do is assess motivation to tackle sleep issues. So it's not just the child has sleep issues. There are some cultures and some families that sleeping with their children, till age 10 is not out of the question. In fact, they prefer a family bed. But you have to also assess your own motivation if you're the parent, or if you're a professional, assess parents' motivation to tackle improving sleep. Because even though you might think it's a big problem, if the family doesn't think it's a big problem worthy of tackling, then that's fine. But if you do find that the child has sleep issues and the parents are struggling and they want a plan to help them solve it, then you can proceed with assessing the child's sleep issues. Where does the child fall asleep? Where does he sleep during the night? Does he share a room with a sibling? Does he share a bed with a sibling? Do they have a family bed, but they want to move the child to their own bed? Are they still in a crib? Are they afraid to move them from the crib to a bed? What's the bedtime routine like? What are naps like? Naps are a big problem for older kids who are not sleeping at night, and then they're taking long naps during the day, and they're really getting their days and nights almost mixed up. So that's a big important thing. If a child continues with naps after the age of 2, I would definitely, even before 2, if they're having struggles at nighttime, I would limit naps to an hour or less and limit the time so that they have to be up by 3 p.m. in order to go to bed at 8 or 9. What does his bedtime look like? What time is his bedtime? What does the entire routine look like? I think one of the things I've seen over the years with a bunch of clients is they get the bath, they get the dressing and the pajamas, and then they go down for a snack, and then they watch TV on the sofa, and the child falls asleep. Then somebody carries the child up. So obviously, in listening to me just for the last few minutes, you could see that that's not ideal. First of all, the child's going to be too big for a parent to carry up very soon if they're not already too big. The child's not going to wake up on the sofa watching TV, so that's going to be different. You really do want to get the child falling asleep by themselves in their own bed. And so my advice is, once you get to the bath and to the bedroom and to pajamas, you need to stay in that bedroom area reading books or relaxing, listening to music to get the child falling asleep without changing locations. And then also any medications before bed, be careful not to do any multivitamins, caffeine, spicy foods. Melatonin is an over-the-counter supplement. I would definitely check with your pediatrician or developmental pediatrician. I know early on our developmental pediatrician who diagnosed Lucas at one day before he was 3 recommended melatonin. For some kids, though, it backfires, and we have data to show that melatonin is really not good. And Benadryl can be the same thing. It can help some kids and then really make a mess of other situations. And then, does the child have a stuffed animal, a blanket? Pacifiers are really tough too. Like after one, I really recommend that you get rid of pacifiers. If the child really needs the pacifier, just like I needed to have Lucas be able to watch TV to fall asleep, you can get my free weaning guide. We'll link that under the show notes as well. And you can just use maybe a pacifier for naps and nighttime and eventually wean that out. If you are going to have electronics, I would recommend like something with a sleep timer. Handheld devices are really bad because the child has too much control of them. Listening to music, you can set on a sleep timer. Yeah, so those sorts of things. And then you also want to look at like how long the child takes to fall asleep and how much sleep is the child actually getting. Naps, your start and end time for naps, your overnight start and end time. And also make sure that your weekdays versus your weekends is not totally different because, when you go on vacation or you have a different schedule and you really are affected one way or the other with not enough sleep usually, or too much sleep, or sleep at the wrong times, that can then carry over to the next few days or even weeks. And then what happens currently when the child wakes up during the night? Do they go into their parents' bed? Do they scream? Do you usually have a gate by the door or by the steps? What does he do if he's in his own room? Does he run around, throw clothes, play with toys? Also, in terms of safety, you have to really make sure that your child's room is safe, that they don't pull furniture, the ability to pull furniture on themselves, make sure furniture's anchored. I've had parents tell me that they sleep in their child's room or they sleep in their child's bed because they don't trust their child. And you may have to start there with continuing that because safety is always, always first. But then what do you have to do to make their room safe? Do you need just a mattress on the floor with nothing else? But hopefully, these tips have given you a little bit to work on in the Kindle ebook, Stop Playing Musical Beds, again, available at marybarbera.com/sleep and linked right below in the show notes. You take that assessment and then you make a plan. And we actually have a self-care checklist, task analysis sheet. It also makes a difference if your child is potty trained. If they're not, that's an area that I specialize in too. I am both a registered nurse as well as a behavior analyst. And so I've been called the potty queen. We have a free potty guide. We can link that in the show notes, but we don't want to prevent a child from using the bathroom at night. If they are using diapers at night, if they drink too many liquids and then their diaper leaks, that can cause nighttime wetting, nighttime wetting and nighttime waking, and a big mess for you to clean up either in the middle of the night or the next morning. So it gets complicated. And even though this guide is only 24 pages long, it is full of information about things like that. And we actually have some sample self-care check sheets for bedtime routines and some do's and don'ts. So let me just end with the do's and don'ts for establishing a bedtime routine. Do always make sure that the routine ends with the child laying in his bed, and be sure that the child remains in bed until he falls asleep. If the parent needs to remain in the room, they should sit on the side of the bed or in a chair or on the floor, or lay a cot on the floor so the child remains in the bed and you temporarily stay in the room and then start phasing yourself out of the room. That's going to be really important. Do always keep safety in mind first. Have a gate to prevent the child from leaving the room. If the child wakes during the night, or like I did, locking the bedroom door, unless they will have access to other parts of the house. And for younger children who aren't toilet trained, I usually recommend gating their room. So for older children, it may need to be a gate outside of, right by the steps or other parts of the house. Again, don't lay down with your child or allow the child to get into the parent's bed. If this is your goal, then you're going to just have to start somewhere. You could sit on the side of the bed or in a rocking chair, or sit on the floor. And then finally, react calmly and consistently when your child wakes up during the night. If they come through the gate, knock on your door, you want to remain calm and positive and offer that promise reinforcer. So I also, in the Kindle ebook, I have ways to keep data to make sure that you're making progress. I don't know that it's happened for any of my clients that we've turned things around in just 3 nights, but know that you can turn things around even if you've been struggling for months or years with sleep issues. So I hope you found that helpful. I hope you will go to marybarbera.com/sleep and purchase the ebook. You can get it on Kindle. You can do a Kindle unlimited trial and get it for free to just start reading it. And I hope, if you like it, that you will leave a great review and rating. If you screenshot that rating or review and send it to me, I will take a special look. And also, this really helps the algorithm and helps me spread the word to get it into more hands. So hopefully that's helpful. If you have a child with autism, signs of autism, speech delays, struggling with sleep, definitely you want to get the Kindle ebook and start making a plan to turn your sleep around. I'll see you right here next time, same place.